The Garden of Still Waters. There was a quiet garden nestled behind a low stone wall, far away from the bustle of the world. The garden was not grand nor wild, but a place of stillness. Each morning, soft sunlight would drift through the light mist, and the dew would sparkle gently on the wide green leaves. The air always carried the delicate scent of blooming flowers, mixed with the earthy aroma of fresh soil. A narrow gravel path wound its way through the garden, crunching softly under the footsteps of those who chose to wander there. Along the path grew lavender bushes, their soft purple flowers swaying slowly in the cool breeze. The air was always fragrant, always calm. Bees would hum quietly as they drifted from flower to flower, their delicate wings shimmering in the sunlight. At the heart of the garden was a small circular pond. Its waters were so still they mirrored the sky above perfectly. Sometimes, a single leaf would float lazily across the surface, leaving ripples that slowly stretched and vanished one after the other. Dragonflies would occasionally skim the water, their delicate bodies barely touching the surface as they hovered in place. Each day, a man named Elliot would visit the garden. He walked slowly, his hands behind his back, breathing deeply as he passed the lavender, the quiet lilies, the gentle moss-covered stones. He never rushed, for there was nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. His footsteps were measured, his pace unchanging, as though time itself slowed to match the rhythm of his walk. He would pause at the pond, watching the water, watching the sky reflected in it, and he would sit upon the same smooth stone, just to listen to the gentle rustling of the leaves. The sounds were soft and familiar, the distant chirping of birds, the gentle trickle of a small stream that fed the pond, the occasional flutter of wings overhead. Letting the soft sounds of the garden settle over him like a warm, familiar blanket. He would feel the breeze brushing against his face, carrying with it the subtle perfume of the lavender and the sweet scent of the pond's water lilies. There was peace in the steady rhythm of the days. Elliot would come to the garden, walk the winding path, pause at the pond, listen to the leaves, and breathe. The garden changed only in the smallest ways. A new flower blooming, a bird resting on a branch, the water catching the light in a slightly different hue. He would sometimes visit different corners of the garden, a secluded bench beneath an arch of ivy, a quiet grove where sunlight danced through tall birch trees, a stretch of stone steps covered in creeping thyme. Each place offered its own soft symphony of sounds, the gentle buzzing of bees, the trickling of water over rocks, the rustling of petals as the wind passed through. As the hours passed, the sun would slowly make its arc across the sky, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across the garden. Elliot would remain, sometimes reading from a small leather-bound book, sometimes simply sitting, watching the clouds drift lazily above. He would take time to trace his fingers over the rough bark of the trees, to pause and observe the small ants on their steady journeys, to marvel at the delicate structure of a spider's web glistening with morning dew. The garden held an endless supply of quiet wonders, each waiting to be noticed. Each evening, as the soft light dimmed and the garden settled into the hush of twilight, Elliot would leave slowly, the gravel crunching beneath his feet, knowing he would return again tomorrow to the same stillness, the same soft peace. And the garden, in its quiet rhythm, would always wait for him.
The lighthouse keeper's routine. Along a quiet stretch of coastline, where the sea sighed softly against the rocks, stood a small lighthouse. It wasn't a tall, towering beacon, but a short, stout one, painted white with a red cap. It watched over the gentle bay, where the waves rolled in and out with a steady rhythm, their motion as dependable as the lighthouse's slow-turning lantern. Inside lived Nora, the lighthouse keeper. Her life was simple and slow, marked by the steady turning of the lantern and the soft sound of waves meeting the shore. Each morning, Nora would wake to the pale light of dawn, the air cool and filled with the salt of the sea. Her routine was unchanging and comforting. She would brew a pot of tea, always the same blend with notes of chamomile and honey. She would sip it slowly by the small window, watching the soft waves roll endlessly to the shore. The sky at dawn was painted in soft pastels, the clouds tinted with shades of pink and gold, the morning light dancing on the gentle waves. After her tea, she would make her way up the winding staircase, her footsteps echoing softly against the stone walls. She would check the lantern, polishing its glass, making sure its slow, circular sweep continued smoothly. The rhythmic creak of the lantern's rotation became a soft background melody to her day. The lighthouse would hum gently, a quiet companion to Nora's days. She would walk the surrounding paths, collecting driftwood and watching the seabirds glide lazily across the sky. She would sit upon the weathered bench overlooking the bay, breathing in the sea air, feeling the slow pull and release of the tide. Sometimes she would spend hours tending to the small garden she kept at the lighthouse's base, carefully trimming the herbs and flowers that thrived in the salty air. Lavender, rosemary, and wild daisies grew in neat clusters, their leaves dancing softly in the wind. On calmer days, she would walk along the shoreline, her boots pressing softly into the damp sand, leaving gentle prints that the tide would slowly erase. She would collect smooth pebbles, bits of sea glass, and shells with delicate spirals, admiring the quiet stories each one seemed to hold. She would read by the soft lamplight stories of distant places she would never need to visit, because the sea, the sky, and the gentle rhythm of the waves were more than enough. Her books became quiet companions, their pages worn and familiar. As night fell, Nora would light a small oil lamp in her room, its golden glow warming the quiet space. The soft pulse of the lighthouse lantern would continue, sweeping out over the calm waters, steady and sure. The evenings were spent listening to the rhythmic crash of the waves against the rocks, the occasional call of seabirds settling into their nests, and the soft sighing of the wind as it brushed against the lighthouse walls. And as she drifted to sleep, the sound of the sea would carry her gently, like a boat floating on still water. Her dreams would be filled with the endless blue, the slow arc of the tides, and the steady turning of the lighthouse light. The endless meadow. Beyond a grove of tall, whispering pines, there stretched a meadow that seemed to go on forever. The grasses swayed in slow, steady waves, and the wildflowers painted the landscape in soft hues of blue, yellow, and white. The air was always filled with the gentle rustle of the grass and the faint buzzing of bees moving from bloom to bloom. A young woman named Mira would walk the meadow each afternoon. She liked the way the grasses brushed softly against her fingertips as she walked slowly, one foot in front of the other, her breath deep and even. The sky above was wide and open, a soft blue canvas where clouds drifted lazily, their edges soft, their movements unhurried. The wind moved like a slow, steady tide across the field, carrying the sweet, delicate scent of clover and wild mint. Mira would follow no particular path. The meadow welcomed wandering. She would pause to watch a butterfly as it fluttered gently from flower to flower, its wings opening and closing in slow, careful beats. She would trace the delicate patterns on its wings, marveling at the tiny details. Sometimes she would sit beneath a tall oak tree, its broad branches casting dappled shadows on the soft ground. She would listen to the quiet rustle of the grasses, the distant chirping of small birds, the soft hum of bees moving gently from bloom to bloom. The oak tree offered shade and a place to rest, its bark rough but comforting against her back. The hours would pass without notice. The sun would slowly arc across the sky, and Mira would continue her gentle wandering, her footsteps light, her mind calm. She would lie in the soft grass, staring up at the clouds, watching them change shape, dissolve, and drift on. She would sometimes collect small wildflowers, weaving them into simple garlands that she draped over her shoulders or set upon the branches of the oak tree. These small rituals gave her a sense of rhythm, of quiet joy. The meadow would reveal new wonders each day. A rabbit pausing to nibble clover, the shimmer of morning dew on tall grasses, the sudden bright flash of a dragonfly's wings in the sunlight. Mira would notice each one, breathing them in as small gifts from the earth. When the soft hues of sunset would begin to color the edges of the clouds, Mira would turn slowly, retracing her path not by direction, but by memory of the shapes of the trees and the bend of the grasses. The meadow seemed to glow in the fading light, the grasses turning golden, the flowers gently closing their petals for the night. Her days in the endless meadow were always the same, always soft, always slow. And as she walked, she felt as though she were floating, carried by the rhythm of the wind and the quiet pulse of the earth beneath her. The gentle river. There was a river that moved so slowly, it was almost as though it was standing still. Its waters were clear and cool, reflecting the sky and the tall reeds that lined its banks. The river wound its way through a valley where time seemed to soften, where the days stretched long and sweet. An old man named Samuel spent his days by this river. His boat, small and wooden, would drift gently along the quiet water, the soft creak of the oars the only sound for long stretches of time. Samuel didn't travel far. He would paddle a little, then let the boat drift. He would watch the ripples form around the boat, spreading slowly, then disappearing into stillness again. He would dip his fingers into the cool water, feeling its gentle current slip past. The riverbanks were lined with willow trees, their long branches trailing in the water, their leaves rustling softly in the breeze. Small birds would hop among the reeds, their songs light and delicate. Occasionally, a fish would break the surface with a soft splash, sending a ring of ripples outward. Samuel would bring with him a small basket with a simple lunch, fresh bread, soft cheese, sweet grapes, and a small flask of tea. He would anchor the boat near a shaded bank and enjoy his meal slowly, savoring each quiet bite while listening to the soft symphony of the river. He often watched the sky, tracing the slow journey of the clouds. He liked how they moved without hurry, how they simply existed, drifting as he did upon the river. Sometimes he would read a well-worn book, his glasses perched low on his nose, the pages turning gently with the breeze. The days were gentle. Paddle, drift, watch, breathe. Sometimes he would nap in the boat, the soft rocking of the water lulling him into a peaceful rest, the sounds of the river wrapping around him like a soft, familiar song. The boat would drift lazily in the current, cradling him as the hours passed unnoticed. Samuel would often explore small inlets and quiet bends in the river, each one offering new places to pause and rest. He would notice the patterns of the stones beneath the water, the shimmer of light playing across their smooth surfaces, the way the willow's reflections danced with the smallest ripples. As the sun lowered, casting golden light across the water, Samuel would paddle back, his strokes slow, the oars dipping rhythmically into the river. The willows would wave softly as he passed, their branches brushing the surface of the water like a tender farewell. He would return again the next day, and the river would be just as he left it, calm, patient, waiting for him to drift once more.